to Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 146 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 2 of A Storm of Swords, that's Catelyn 1.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter, and we're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment while we do it.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing just fine. How about you?
I'm doing well. Rob, my brother Rob, who's featured on this pod many times.
Yes.
As a character, punchline usually. His 16-year-old daughter Elizabeth is staying with us for the summer. She just arrived on Friday from Scotland, and it's very nice to have her. And she is a brave cookie. So she's 16 years of age, and she flew on her own from Scotland.
Wow.
She flew Edinburgh to Washington, D.C., and then Washington, D.C. to Raleigh. And she missed her connection. Her flight was delayed, and then she had trouble getting through customs. And so she missed her connection and had to rebook. And I don't know if you... This may be very topical, but traveling by plane in the United States at the moment is a misery. Like, if you miss your connections, it gets really bad.
Yes, I can imagine it does.
Yeah. So she's only 16, and basically I have no way of contacting her. She's got like a cell phone, but she doesn't have a plan that could make it work in the United States.
Oh.
You know? She can go to Wi-Fi zone and sort of like IM me kind of thing, but she sorts it out. She gets booked onto the next flight. And the next flight then gets delayed, and she finally gets in. We get home from the airport at about 1:30 on Saturday morning.
Oh, goodness.
Which was 25 hours after she set off. So a long day.
No.
Yeah. But the funny thing was, at the same time, my good friends, Tim and Ali, were going on vacation of a lifetime to Italy. They'd spent a fortune on this trip, and their flights got so messed up that they cancelled the entire trip.
You're not filling me with confidence here.
I know you don't need to hear this because you've got a trip coming up.
Yes,
but
I do.
The next day we hung out with Tim and Ali, and I told Elizabeth as we drove there. I said, Elizabeth, if you tell the story of your trip to anyone, they will have enormous sympathy for what you went through, with two exceptions. The two people we're going to see. Don't say a word. Keep it quiet.
Oh, wow. Yes.
It was plain sailing all the way. Yeah.
That's terrifying, if I'm being honest. The whole thing is rather terrifying. I keep seeing headlines about flights being delayed and canceled and stuff. So now we fly out. Our first leg goes out at 7:30 in the morning. So I'm hoping... That's leg
pre-thunderstorms.
Yes, that because it starts like the delays start as the day goes on.
Yes, it gets worse. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So, oh boy.
But actually, in some ways, Elizabeth was lucky she missed her flight because when her original flight was due to land was when we had that enormous thunderstorm on Friday night.
Oh,
it would have been crazy. And that plane took off on time from Dulles, which is why she missed it. But it landed 80 minutes late. 80.
80 minutes late. Wow.
They circled and circled to let that thing get out of the way. And actually, funnily enough, we drove north the next day with Tim and Ali, who lucky for them, weren't in Italy, but had the joy of my company instead.
Much better.
Yeah. There was an enormous amount of debris just north of here, so it looked like tornadoes had touched down. There was a ton of debris.
Yeah, we went to see Maverick, that new Top Gun Tom Cruise movie, with a couple friends of ours, and afterward we were driving to this brewery because, of course, me and breweries, it's like peanut butter and jelly. And it was like we were driving through a tornado. There were limbs falling and leaves everywhere. It was a complete mess.
But question for you. Was there rain?
Not a lot.
Yes, that was the strange thing. It was all wind and damage, right? But very little rain. We had the same experience.
Yeah.
The road was bone dry. It was raining on us, but only sort of slightly. And the road was bone dry in front of us. But the trees were blowing like it was the end of times.
There was the tree, literally the entrance to the brewery was blocked by a fallen tree. That's
Wow.
how hard the wind was blowing. But
Yeah.
speaking of that trip, who wants to hear more stories about Ethan's love life? Raise your hand if you do.
Oh,
Raise your
everyone, come on.
hand. So we went to this brewery that, but they didn't have food. So right next door, like in the same building, just at the other side of the building, was this little restaurant. So we went in there, and the waitress was a lovely young lady, and Stacy was so smitten by her that she decided she was going to try and set her up with Ethan.
So Ethan was not present.
No,
right?
Ethan was not present. It
Oh,
was Stacy
no.
and I and our friends Scott and Jen. And she was like, I think I'm going to do it. But she started to get cold feet. And then Jen was like, so we've got a question for you. And, kind of prompted Stacy into doing it. And I said to her, I was like, this is so awkward. I can't even look you in the eye right now. I was talking to the waitress. And so Stacy is selling Ethan to this waitress. And she's like, do you have a boyfriend? And she was like, no. And Stacy was like, check one. How old are you?
As a middle-aged couple, I think Stacy should preface everything she's saying with, it's not us.
Yes, I hope she did. It was all such a blur. I can't even remember how she led it. I hope she led it with this is all questions revolve around my son's interest. So she asked the girl, and the young girl she put her phone number on the receipt, and she and Ethan have been texting since last Friday.
Well, Stacy Ray giving the matchmaking.
I know, right? Ethan's friends have asked if she could be their wingman. And one friend, Stephen, was like, "Can I be next?"
It's an interesting thing to say yes to, because I'm sure, given that Stacy is Ethan's mother, that she made a real case for him. All of his fantastic qualities and attributes. But the waitress knew that she was talking about her son.
Right, yes.
So you'd imagine you'd filter that just a little bit,
Yes, exactly. You got to put the mom filter on a little bit.
Right. But I guess she was willing to take a chance,
So I never thought there was a chance that was going to work. And
but here's the thing, you and Stacy, attractive couple. She's melding your faces into one. She's like, you know what? This could be a winner.
Maybe she did tell Ethan that we were the best table she's had in ages, because we were a lot of fun.
Oh, good for you. Well, there you go.
Well, I think our dynamic personalities, colored what Ethan, what his personality might be like enough for her, I guess.
Well, but maybe you've gone too far. Maybe you've set too much expectation.
Right? Yes, it'll fall flat on his face.
All right. Well, let's get down to business. How did we leave Catelyn Stark? Last we saw of Catelyn, she was plying Jamie Lannister with drink, threatening him with a sword, and, although this happened subsequently, freeing him from his cell in Riverrun. She charged Brienne of Tarth with guiding the Kingslayer safely to King's Landing, where she expects her daughters, Sansa and Arya, to be released in return. We know, although Cat doesn't, that the first posse sent out to bring them back, led by Sir Robin Ryger, had been foiled by Brienne. Mackelly, why don't we give them a summary of this one?
Okay. Sir Desmond Grell, Master at Arms of Riverrun, and Utherydes Wayn, Lord Huster Tully's steward.
Oh, interjection, please. How are you saying Mr. Wayn's first name?
Roy Dotrice pronounces it Utherydes.
I see. I was going for Utherydes.
Utherydes. That has a very Greek sound to it.
It does have a very Greek sound, but to me it has a very Greek spelling. It looks Greek.
Yeah. Roy Dotrice, he doesn't always match. Like, also in this chapter, we might refer to Brienne of Tarth.
Oh, yes. All right. Well,
who knows? We might even throw Petire Baelish in here.
Yes, exactly. All right. Do continue. I apologize.
She has sympathy for them, being Sir Desmond Grell and Utherydes Wayn, or Utherydes, depending on how you want to go with that. She knows that she has put them in an awful position. They've both known her since birth, but there's no doubting that she has committed treason and embarrassed them horribly by doing so on their watch. But they fall over themselves to list the extenuating circumstances. But every sentence contains a but.
They offer her a defence. A mother's madness, you did not know, but she's too much of a Stark these days for that kind of sophistry. I understood what I was doing and knew it was treasonous. She offers to occupy Jamie's vacated cell and wear his irons proudly. Sir Desmond is horrified, and Wayn suggests confinements to chambers. Cat asks that they be her father's chambers, and all agree. The steward reports that Robin Ryger has been sent to bring Jamie back, so her treason was for nothing. Cat prays to the warrior to aid Brienne.
Sitting with her father, she wonders what he'd say of her crime. Lord Hoster Tully calls out Tansy. Cat reminds him who she is, but he continues speaking of blood and asking for forgiveness. She asks who Tansy is. Can she get her for him? Hoster continues as if he doesn't hear her. He says she'll have other children, trueborn children, if she's a good wife.
Hoster gives a cry of pain, and Maester Vyman rushes in to administer the milk of the puppy. Cat asks Vyman about this Tansy. The Maester cannot recall any such woman. He later checks with Wayn, who confirms that no one has entered into the castle service with such a name. Vyman is hesitant to talk to Catelyn as the staff has been put on restrictions from speaking to her outside of what their duties require.
Cat spends much of the day watching the river, waiting for a sail to come into view, meaning Jamie Lannister has been recaptured. As of yet, the river stays empty. She does see a raven arrive at the rookery. When next Vyman returns, Cat asks about the news that the raven brought. Has Jamie been recaptured? Has Edmure been hurt? Has Robb been hurt? After some protestations citing the imposed speaking restrictions, he divulges Tywin Lannister has left the Riverlands, so Edmure is not in danger.
The raven came from the west. Robb took a wound storming the crag, but says it's nothing to worry about. Cat does worry, but Vyman gives no more information and leaves the chambers. Cat sits with her father, who once again incoherently speaks of Tansy, forgiveness, and blood. Cat is worried over what her father did to need so much forgiveness, wondering if he possibly fathered a bastard on the woman, an idea she cannot fathom.
Next, she ponders if Tansy is a nickname he gave Lysa, like he called her Cat. He's been frequently confusing her for both her sister and her mother. With Lysa in mind, she replays the part about her having other sweet, trueborn babes. Lysa has had a plethora of miscarriages over the years, but not here in Riverrun.
It's then that she recalls how happy Lysa was after the marriages to Ned and Jon Arryn, when they were both late for their moonblood. Lysa was so sure they would both have boys, best friends more like brothers than cousins. Only Lysa got her moonblood shortly thereafter. When Robb was born, Lysa couldn't even hold the baby. Dawns on Catelyn she might have lost a child, not just been late with her moonblood. The idea would explain Lysa and Jon Arryn's loveless relationship. Taking Lysa to wife was the price Jon Arryn paid to earn the backing of Riverrun in Robb's rebellion.
The next day, Cat pens a letter to Lysa, asking that she come visit her father before he dies. If not that, at least send a letter. He's hanging on purely in hopes of reconciliation with her. Not long after, she hears commotion outside the castle. At first, she thinks it's Robin Ryger with Jamie. However, she soon learns it's her brother Edmure and his army returning to Riverrun.
Edmure makes Catelyn wait 2 hours before paying her a visit. He informs her that he's consistently thrown the Lannister forces back from the fords, yet it's not all good news. Stannis has lost in King's Landing, and Highgarden and Dorne have backed Joffrey's claim. Cat can see the major blow that these developments are to Robb's ambitions, but she's not completely broken up that Stannis didn't win, remembering how he killed Renly.
Right, the Shadow Assassin.
Edmure is furious that Cat freed Jamie, but not to worry. He sent ravens to Harrenhal, alerting Roose Bolton, who will surely fix the damage she's done. The piling up of bad news is too much for her. Now she has no chance of getting her girls back.
Chance was slim to begin with, but
yes.
It's gotten even slimmer now.
Yes.
So there's a heavy focus on Cat and her actions to start Storm of Swords here. Aside from the prologue, both Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 are directly focused around Cat's actions of freeing Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think partly that goes to the whole, that preface about the timing. I think we rewound in time to look at what these other characters were doing, and primarily that was at River Run that we had things to talk about.
Right.
And the fact that Jamie got made a POV character sort of just allowed us to have two in a row.
Yeah.
Same general.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking, speaking of the actions of Cat, I was thinking that her actions in general have had, you can make an argument they've had as much impact on our story as any other character in the world. She convinced Ned to accept the Hand of the King offer from Robert, took Tyrion hostage, which led to the War of Lannister aggression, which also led to Ned getting injured, and he kept sending his men away to help fight, to help bring Gregor Clegane into check, and then because Jamie was angry about Tyrion being taken captive, many of Ned's closest men, like Jerry Cassell, were killed when Ned got injured. And now she's freed Jamie, and we'll have to see what the fallout might be from that. So she's quite the stir of the pot in Westeros.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. I mean, you definitely could point to some others, but people like Joffrey beheading Ned, that's a pretty big one.
Sure.
But you're right. I mean, sort of like the butterfly effect is definitely centered around Catelyn.
Yeah.
Her smaller steps lead to the big changes in the realm, for sure.
Yeah.
Joffrey goes for the big step.
That's right. He doesn't mess around with little butterfly changes.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I read this chapter, I was struck by how it sort of like conformed to your expectations. I mean, we knew there weren't many authority figures left in River Run. That's one of the reasons that she was able to free Jamie. So it falls, for now at the start of the chapter at least, to the civil servants to punish Cat.
Right.
But she is and always will be their lord's eldest child. Their authority over her is always going to rely on her compliance. If she said no to being bound, they probably wouldn't have known what to do.
That's true. Yeah. So, do you think her rejection of any loopholes to get out of this situation was noble dignity, or do you think it was her refusal to be dismissed as a silly woman who didn't know what she was doing, or maybe a combination thereof?
I think there's a third thing, which is actually sparing these guys from the difficult position, from being in an even more difficult position.
Sure.
Because as long as she cooperates with them, she's making their life a little bit easier now, having made their lives pretty miserable by what she's done.
Yeah. I could see that. Yeah. So Edmure left, when he went out to fight at the Battle of the Fords. He left Desmond Grell in charge. Do you think he should have considered putting Cat in charge while away? Ned put her in charge in Winterfell, and of course that worked out horribly. But maybe Edmure had paid attention and saw how poorly that worked out. But she is the eldest child of Lord Hoster Tully, and she's in River Run at the moment, so...
Right. So that's the thing, you see. Even though she wasn't put in charge, she was in many ways in charge, because she could order the person in charge around,
Right. Yes. So you might as well have just put her in charge, because she's the senior most authoritative voice in the castle.
And even if you've learned your lesson about putting her in charge, you really need to take her with you.
Yes. If you think about what happened when Ned put her in charge, she was the lady in Winterfell. He left. She immediately left right after he did. Never went back to the castle that she was put in charge of. Didn't make any of the preparations Ned asked her to make in the north. Started a war. Left the castle to be taken. And her sons, at least as she believes, to be killed. So maybe he was best to leave Sir Desmond Grell in charge in hindsight.
Yeah. But what you needed to do was then give him some kind of royal warrant to say, you're in charge. Really, you're in charge. Do not be ordered around by anyone.
Right.
Least of all, that idiot who keeps messing things up. But confinement to her father's chambers is an ideal situation here, because she's out of sight of those who would want to see her punished. And also she's helping to ease the last days of her father. But, I mean, just continuing sort of how I thought the chapter was going to, how I expected the chapter to end. I mean, I expected her to hear the bad news, or rather, hear for her the good news of Robin Ryger's failure to capture Jamie Lannister. But she was also bound to start hearing the bad news that for her of Tyrion's loss of authority and other people coming up with ways to try and stop Jamie were always kind of going to be on the cards.
Right.
So Edmure's plan is to send ravens ahead of him and have people blocking his path.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that others hadn't thought of that already. Really.
Right.
But I will also mention, I think you touched on this, her saying, I understood what I was doing and I knew it was treasonous. That is often why defense lawyers do not put their witnesses on the stand. that kind of self-incrimination
right.
is helping no one.
Plead the fifth there. Plead the fifth.
Yeah. But the thing is, this whole chapter seemed to sort of follow this progression of kind of expectation, apart from this whole Tansy thing.
Right. That was a wild card.
Yeah, it's complete wild card. Why? What is this about? So my initial thought as I started to read it was that he'd somehow murdered this woman. Because she was bleeding and he was begging for forgiveness. I was like, did he accidentally stab someone or something? But then it quickly becomes apparent that this is a childbirth thing or a miscarriage or something like that.
Yeah.
Because what he follows up with is, don't worry, you will have more children. They will be trueborn. So then the natural next thought is, well, this is before he got married. This was someone he had an affair with who he intended to marry and did not marry. Or it did occur to me that it actually could be his wife.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. Sure, those were all things that Kat considered until she eventually got to the root of the mystery.
But you see, I still don't believe the root of the mystery. And do you know why I don't believe the root of the mystery? It's because of the nickname. How could a father have a nickname for his daughter that his other daughter doesn't know about?
Especially when they roomed together. I believe they shared chambers.
Right.
So, because Kat sorted it out, I will fill in the blanks. I don't think anything I'm about to say is spoilerish, because Kat did sort the mystery out pretty quickly. It took her basically like one day to sort it out. So she got a clue right from the start, but I don't think she picked up on it, at least consciously. Kat said out loud, "Monstrous, cruel thing to lose a child." And the very next line is Hoster saying, "Tansy." So there's a little bit of a clue there that this has something to do with the loss of a child.
Right.
So Tansy was not a nickname that Hoster gave Lysa. Tansy is a key ingredient in moon tea, which causes pregnant women to lose child. It's also known as tansy tea.
So it wasn't a nickname for Lysa.
No, he was saying the name of the tea, tansy tea or moon tea.
Well, how about that?
So yeah, because you're right. It doesn't make any sense that she would not have ever heard of this nickname before.
But Kat never says what you just said. Kat never says, "Oh, tansy, maybe he means that tea for making pregnancies go away."
Yeah, I guess I guess she wasn't aware of. I mean, maesters make it, not your average day person, I guess.
Okay, so just a couple more things. She still thinks it's a person throughout. And so this is what I don't understand. How does she come to the conclusion it's Lysa when she thinks Tansy is the name? when she's never heard Lysa referred to as Tansy? You've done it. You've cracked the code because you've figured out what Tansy actually means. It's not a name of someone. It's a tea.
Right.
But how does Cat come to the conclusion whilst still having that name?
I think she pieced it together through all of the miscarriage, the trueborn and all of that miscarriage, the blood. He never specifically said miscarriage, but he talked about the blood, and you'll have other children, trueborn children. I think piecing it all together is how she leapt that. Now, I will say we possibly should have sent Kat to King's Landing instead of Ned, because she is quite the puzzle master here. If you think of all the puzzles, she figured out that the Lannisters were involved in Bran falling off the tower simply because Jamie didn't go on the hunt and someone tried to kill Bran with a fancy dagger. She solves this in like one restless night of sleep, one sleepless night. Whereas Ned, he would have had to have seen a pregnancy test from Lysa, a receipt for Tansy tea from the Maester, interviewed half the staff, and then consulted Littlefinger just to get Littlefinger involved.
So then my question about this to you is when did this happen? Because let me just before you answer, let me just mention I actually did some research on this one, because I was like, was there a period of time between Cat leaving Riverrun and Lysa leaving Riverrun in which this might have occurred? But I don't believe there was. I believe they left Riverrun at the same time.
Right. They stayed through Cat's pregnancy because she hands Lysa baby Robb.
And they were married on the same day, right? So there was no...
Yes.
There was no chance of an untrueborn child in that period because it would have been a trueborn child.
Yes. So... basically, she had to have been pregnant. Lysa had to have been pregnant before she married Jon Arryn.
Right.
So she knew, which is part of the, it tells you something that she was so excited about them having these babies that she was sure were going to be two boys, when she had to have known she was pregnant with another man's baby who was not Jon Arryn.
Wait, though. Okay, slow me down here. So you think that when they both thought they were pregnant at the same instant,
yes,
right at the start of their marriages, that is the baby she lost to Tansy T?
Yes. That is because otherwise she had no opportunity to not have a trueborn heir, unless she had an affair on Jon Arryn, as theoretically possible.
But what about years earlier? I mean, she was 20 when she got married. Couldn't this have happened when she was 16?
Well, that's possible. It's not the revelation that Kat comes to. Kat recalls how sad she was when she got her moon blood shortly after she thought they were pregnant at the same time.
Okay, but I'm not sure how I'm not sure how Tansy T works, but it might be that having taken Tansy T for a previous pregnancy, it makes later pregnancies harder to maintain.
Very possible, which is possibly why Hoster wants her forgiveness so badly. That she's had, aside from not including this possible miscarriage here with the Tansy T, she's had 5 miscarriages, and one thing that we didn't hear about in this chapter, but Brendan Tully, Hoster's brother and the girl's uncle, told Kat when they met up in the Vale, remember after their trek through the mountains of the moon with Tyrion, he said she's had 2 stillborn births and twice as many, which turns out to actually be 5 miscarriages. So she's had a really difficult time trying to give birth.
But it feels to me like you are putting all your faith here in Kat's incredible intuition.
Yes. That's true. That is true.
Precious little evidence to back it up. I mean...
there's little bits of evidence here and there.
Right, there's little bits of evidence. But for instance, let's say, I don't know exactly how old she was, but let's say she was 20 when she got married. You're saying that Kat's intuition that pregnancy that they both had right at the start of their marriages. Well, Kat's was with Ned, but Lysa's predated their marriage and just happened to end after she got married.
Right. Theoretically, that's the evidence that Kat has put together to come up with her theory that this is.
But if Lysa had got pregnant from a stable boy at 16, her father might have said, "You are getting rid of that."
Yes, you're absolutely right. It doesn't necessarily have to have been that exact instance.
Right. And clearly she's had problems with miscarriages subsequently, and presumably they're not all Tansy tea.
Right. And so that chapter when Kat first arrived at River Run back in Clash of Kings, it was Cat 5, I think. Once again, Hoster confused Kat for Lysa, and he said to her then, "That stripling, wretched boy, do not speak that name to me. Do your duty. Oh, gods, forgive me my medicine." Medicine possibly meaning the Tansy tea. And Kat at the time thought maybe it was a squire or a hedge knight, a tradesman's son, very possibly a singer. She was really into singers, apparently. So, yes, it doesn't have to have been that exact time when she was a little late. It could have been earlier. You're right.
But now you've planted the seed of who the father might be because of that. Now that's a big clue as to who the father might be.
Marillion, the singer. That's where you're going.
That's not what I was going to say.
Simon Silvertongue. No doubt.
No, because the one person who's, Hoster Tully would be pretty mad at whoever impregnated his daughter. But he was pretty mad at the person I'm thinking of before he impregnated the daughter. Right. For challenging his other daughter's betrothed to a duel.
You're just going straight in for it.
Well, I'm basing this on a lot more evidence than Catelyn Stark is.
It's true, you are.
Because, yes, so no, but I think this is good. I don't think this is now just speculation based on this. So you're saying Hoster Tully was saying, you've got to take the medicine because I won't hear of that stripling boy because he's fallen out with Peter Baelish over the whole, yes. But Peter Baelish, we know, has a thing for the Tully girls.
Yes, he claims to have taken both their maidenheads. So we know. According to him, he and Lysa have been intimate.
But the Tully girls have admitted to practicing kissing him. I remember that.
Right. Kat denies having her maidenhood taken by Peter Baelish, though. But there's another line in here where she says that Jon Arryn needed a young wife known to be fertile. So it seems like part of the enticement to marry Lysa, aside from you'll get the backing of River Run and Robert's Rebellion, is that she had already been pregnant once. So it's kind of a double-edged sword for Jon Arryn, because Kat also speculates that Jon Arryn would not be able to warm to Lysa because she had been deflowered by someone previously.
Yeah, so it is, very much a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you're not getting the virginal wife you might have wanted, but hey, you're 70, take what you got.
It's true.
On the other hand, she's capable of spitting out a baby. Well, except You don't know that because she's taken Tansy tea, which apparently cures the current pregnancy and the next 4.
Yeah, apparently it sure seems that way. But so you might think Wyman should know about this because he would have been the one to have given Lysa the Tansy tea. But as we found out back in Cat 6 of A Clash of Kings, it was not Wyman that was the maester when they were growing up. It was a man named Maester Kim, who was the River Run maester. So now it's unclear when Maester Kim died, but it was likely him, not Wyman, that gave Lysa the Tansy tea.
Nevertheless, he would know what Tansy tea is.
He definitely would. The only excuse you can make for him is that he wasn't present for the context of the reference.
Right. Yes.
because all Cat said to him was, he keeps asking for a Tansy. Who's this Tansy? And, it wouldn't make sense for him to say Tansy. Well, you could make moon tea out of Tansy.
Right. And of course, if they had a longer conversation, it might come up. He said, Tansy, we have a thing called Tansy. And then he might have mentioned it,
Right, yeah.
But as it was, he was on instructions not to talk to her. So they didn't explore that. So this also explains why Hoster would feel such a need for forgiveness, because obviously he would have been the one to insist on her taking the Tansy tea, and then it sounds like she nearly died from it.
Seemed like there was a lot of blood, that's for sure.
Right. So that would make you feel pretty bad as a father, presumably, hopefully. I'd like to like Hoster Tully. It's becoming more and more difficult.
Yes, it really is. Yeah, it really is. And, one of the things she considers, and I think you may have mentioned this earlier, is that could Hoster have possibly fathered a bastard on this Tansy? And Cat can't even wrap her head around this idea, and I thought, well, that'd be a wee bit of karma right there after the mistreatment that she had shown Jon for being Ned's bastard, and then discovered that the father that she revered also had fathered a bastard.
Yeah. We don't know Hoster that well, but he can't be any less likely to have sired a bastard than Ned Stark.
That's not possible.
Right.
To be less likely. So, one thing that learning this backstory of Cat and her challenges conceiving a child, which we did know about, but now about the fact that it was not only just an arranged marriage, but kind of like she was a chip in a negotiation between Hoster and Jon Arryn. You start to understand why Cat was so shocked by Lysa's behavior in the Eyrie, because when Cat originally, when she was talking about the Lysa that was so excited to have these boys together, there was such love and life in her, and she hadn't seen her a whole lot since then. And then she sees her in the Eyrie when Cat brings Tyrion to her, and it's a totally different person. So it's you start to understand why. She's been through a lot. You understand why she's so overprotective of her son Robin, or Robert. I guess Sweet Robin they call him, but Robert. And he was basically a miracle baby.
Yeah, but you can subtract everything we're speculating about here in this chapter from that, because if you have 2 stillborns and 5 miscarriages, you're going to be a different person than you were before those. You know what I mean?
Yes,
you don't have to have had a forced abortion on top of all that.
Right. Yes, right. It might also explain a little bit about why she hasn't pledged the veil to the Tully Stark side of the war. Maybe she's had a complete falling out with her father, and she wants nothing to do with the Tully name and River Run.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
That's very interesting. Yeah, it's always come across as just sort of like, self-defense, looking after Sweet Robin, not wanting to not want to bring any danger to him. But now what you're saying makes a lot of sense, that this could be, well, now it's payback time for what you did to me.
Possibly. Yeah, she's never indicated that. She's always said she needs to protect the veil, but I mean that might play an element. It might be an element in the overall decision making.
Wow. I mean, you've got me thinking it. I mean, I knew the outcome of this. I actually knew what the true story was. It's not like during the recording of this I've discovered something, but the implications of it are kind of far-reaching.
Oh yeah, right.
And it is interesting what it would do to the marriage of Jon and Lysa, because of course she was she was always going to be somewhat of an unwilling bride because he was so old.
Right.
But coupled with the fact that she was perhaps pregnant with a love child of someone she actually loved, perhaps, who she was then forced to abort.
And then almost, I don't want to say sold to the highest bidder. I mean, that might be a bit harsh on Hoster Tully, but in arranged marriages were pretty widely accepted in Westeros. Right. But she was sold basically, hey, my daughter's been tainted. She's she was pregnant with a love child that I had to have aborted. So if you will take her off my hands, I will pledge you the Riverlands support. That's
okay. So moving on. While Kat's pondering this whole thing, she does get word of Robb's injury, and we know from, for example, Khal Drogo that even minor wounds can be fatal.
Yeah, especially if Mirri Maz Duur is involved.
True. Who tells her? Is it Vyman who tells her what the Raven brought, or was it?
Yeah, it was Vyman. Yeah,
it was Vyman. I mean, he says that Robb was being tended by the Maester of the Crag, so that is his enemy.
Right.
So it really could be a Mirri Maz Duur.
Yeah, really could.
Yeah. So Kat's worry for him is very much understandable, but it does appear that Robb himself is writing the letters, so it's not exactly at death's door. But then neither was Khal Drogo until he was.
That's true. It turned pretty quickly for Khal Drogo. Now, Kat saw the Raven coming in with the news, and she thought dark wings, dark words, which is obviously a very common saying in Westeros because we hear it pretty much every time we see a Raven with a message. But she was also in a pretty dark mood at the time, so maybe she was anticipating bad news because she was also kind of looking for karma to bite her here because she knows that she committed treason and put a lot of people in a really rough position.
So. Can I mention that this morning it was so cool here after it's been brutally hot for so
yes.
long. It was so cool this morning that I went and sat outside and had a cup of coffee outside, and I was just laying back, sort of looking at the trees and the sky and just sort of like soaking in the cool. And a crow or a raven, I don't know what the difference between those two things is. A black bird flew across quite low. And it was silhouetted against the sky behind it, and it was exactly our logo.
Oh, that's awesome! You should have. If you had a camera, you could have taken a new logo.
I know.
For us.
I really thought about that. I was like, I should have had my camera with me.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that Crag. They mentioned that Robb was injured. He took a wound storming the Crag. The Crag is a castle along the coast of the Sunset Sea. It's the seat of House Westerling. That's all we'll say about that for now. I just wanted to mention what the Crag was.
But Robb continues his... Robb is, on the subject of karma, Robb is the exact opposite of every other Stark.
He really is.
Good news all the time for Robb.
Yeah, aside from his father's death, well, and his brother's, what he would believe is their death, everything else going on with everyone else in his family is not so good. But for him, personally.
Yes, exactly. If he could just ignore what his family is up to, everything's coming up roses for Robb.
Yes, right. He's been clicking on all cylinders here. Now, you got to wonder, though, I mean, is this truly a minor injury? Or like you said, could this be the start of some sort of slide for him? The news got grim for him, what we already knew, but what Kat finds out here from Edmure. But before we get to that, I wondered, what if it had been a mortal wound? What if Robb had died? Would the Northmen have returned home? Would Edmure have bent the knee to Joff/Tywin?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. There's no heir anymore.
Right.
As they understand it. I mean, it would be Sansa.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because Jon's in the Night's Watch, so he can't hold titles or lands.
Yeah. So, but that's a kind of a perfect position for the Lannisters, because then they could Sansa would take a deal whereby she could go to back to Winterfell, bend the knee, accept Joffrey as the king, and you can go back to Winterfell and be the Lady of Winterfell.
Yes, that would be one way to go about it. Or they could marry her off to someone.
Right, even better.
Yes, like how they did with Wet Nurse. Tyrek Lannister, how they married him off to little Ermesad.
Right, yeah. But actually, here's it. What about Tommen?
Oh yes, absolutely. Now remember at Joff's name day tournament, she thought, now too bad Tommen isn't the older one. I could marry that guy.
Right. Huh. Or even maybe Highgarden or Dawn. Do they have sons? They do have sons in Dawn, don't they?
Trystane is betrothed to
Marcella.
Right.
But what about what's he called? Loras Tyrell.
Loras, yeah.
He's just become a Kingsguard, hasn't he?
He has, but he's got 2 older brothers that.
Right. But one of them needs to stay in Highgarden to be the heir to Highgarden.
True.
But a second son there, that cements a big part of the kingdom.
Right. So yeah, the fact that Robb doesn't have an heir just makes matters even better for the Lannisters right now.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's a good thought experiment. Let's hope he does not get Miri Mazdur.
Yes, right.
Although this could wrap up the books fairly nicely in 3 books, I think, if that's how it all pans out, because this could actually fall into place. Yeah, not exactly how I would want it to end, but at least a logical conclusion. When Edmure gets back, his news is that Tywin continued to try to cross the Red Fort back to the west, and Edmure sort of brags about having prevented him over and over again, kind of thing. I wonder. I mean, I've been Team Edmure for a long time.
Yes, you have. You've given him the benefit of the doubt more so than anyone else.
I have, because he is basically a reincarnation of Maegor. He's just misunderstood, is all he is. But he...
That's a title that nobody wants right there. You know who you remind me of?
Not because of the cruelty, just to be clear. It's
the misunderstood part.
But here you've got to feel, and the thing is, to a certain extent, he's being set up for this. He's always kind of a fall guy for things. I think he was being lured into a fight that wasn't actually a fight. That the whole time, Tywin was always headed south to King's Landing. That was his plan.
Yeah, you really think it was a feign to?
It was all feints over and over again, just to keep Edmure busy, just to keep the impression that they were trying to go west, so that no word could reach Stannis' camp that they weren't, because if they'd all just split south and Edmure had seen them going, he might have gone back to Riverrun and sent a raven to Storm's End saying, you might have another army headed your way.
Oh, yeah, that makes some sense. That does.
So Edmure was outsmarted again.
But, on the surface, it looks like Edmure might possibly have been too successful, because his victories likely led to Stannis' defeat.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I think he was being played all along. He was only winning. If Tywin had thrown himself into those fords, he would have crossed the Red Fork and gone back to the west. He never intended to.
Okay. Sure. But it's funny that Edmure is very upset about Stannis' defeat. He comes in kind of moping, and Cat says, "Are you hurt?" And he explains, "No, I threw the Lannisters back, but Stannis lost." And Cat's like, "Okay, that's no big deal. I've seen what Stannis can do. I'm kind of not too broken up about that." Well, but then he mentions that Highgarden has entered on the side of the Lannisters, and so has Dorne. But he doesn't seem to realize that his possible role in Stannis losing.
Yeah.
Your theory aside, on the surface, it looks like he prevented Tywin from getting back to the west, forcing him southeast back into King's Landing, allowing him to defeat Stannis.
Right. In either event, Edmure is a patsy in this. If he is fighting a straw man who is hiding the truth, then he's a patsy. If he is actually stopping them heading west, he's also a patsy. He's also causing the problem. So either way, it's his fault.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Edmure's stuck. He's literally stuck in the middle.
But just a mention of all this news, Tyrion Lannister deserves a big pat on the back from the Lannisters, which he's not going to get, because he arranged for Dorne to be on their side. It was his plan that brought Dorne in on the Lannister side,
right?
And he approved the plan of sending Peter Baelish to treat with the Tyrells to bring Highgarden and the Reach in on that side as well.
Yep.
So, but also a feather in the cap for Peter Baelish as well.
Kat does find out, speaking of Tyrion, Kat does find out that Tyrion took an axe to the head and would likely die, and that was a big blow to her because she was counting on... She said she thought to herself, I made Jamie make 1,000 vows, but it was his brother's vow that I was banking on.
Right. And we said that last chapter, actually. We said the same thing, that she was never going to bank on Jamie's vow, which was extorted, but also only loosely held, because she was banking on Tyrion, and now she's lost that.
Although one thing we forgot to mention last chapter is that, Kat seems to have forgotten that when Tyrion sent back the last offer that included, the training for the girls, the whole thing was really just a ruse to try and break Jamie out of the dungeon, or technically at that point he was in a cell. So, how honest his trade proposal was is also rather up for debate.
But compare it to if Catelyn Stark could find a way to spring the girls from King's Landing, she would do it in a heartbeat, right? If she got the girls back, she would impress upon Robb Stark to let Jamie Lannister go.
She would. I agree.
It would fall on deaf ears, but she would. And I think she would expect the same of Tyrion. He's going to do everything he can to get Jamie home, but if he gets Jamie home, he's going to reciprocate on the deal. That's her thinking.
Right.
Even if he gets him home by helping him to escape, he'll still honor the deal.
Yeah, possibly. I think you're right. I think there's very possible that he would, but he doesn't have to. They've got no leverage. The Starks have given up their leverage by turning Jamie over.
But the thing is, let's say the war is over. Both sides have got captives. Essentially, you've got to exchange the captives. The one captive who is unexchangeable here is Jamie Lannister, because there are people in the North who'll never give him up for the things that he's done.
Right.
And so you've got to do it this way in some ways, because you just can't keep him any other way. Whereas once Jamie's free, you could trade the girls for whoever you want. The Lannisters aren't that keen in feeding to.
One, actually.
Well, yes. Okay, so do you have any background for us?
I do. So, Kat tells us that Jon Arryn had 2 previous wives before Lysa, neither of whom gave him living children. His first wife was Jane Royce, and the Royces, of course, being a powerful house in the Vale. A marriage between the Arryns and the Royces make a lot of sense. The couple were betrothed at a young age and married shortly after Jon's father Jasper died, making Jon Lord of the Eyrie and Defender of the Vale. But tragically, Jane gave birth to a stillborn daughter, and even more tragically, Jane died in childbed while giving birth to that daughter. Jon's second wife was his cousin Rowena Arryn. It seems there was obviously no interest in marrying for increased power or alliance with this marriage, as he was marrying within the family. But yet again, Jon was faced with tragedy when Rowena died of a winter chill. Her untimely death came before the couple could make any children together. But with this added insight, you had mentioned earlier that maybe it was the moon tea or the Tansy tea that caused Lysa to have so much trouble giving birth. But as we see that Jon also had his stillborn daughter with Jane Royce, you wonder if maybe Jon carried a trait that caused children to have difficulties living through birth. We got 3 stillbirths and 5 miscarriages between 2 wives.
Okay, I'm going to go to bat for Jon Arryn's seed here.
The seed is
wife
strong.
Number 1, the seed might be strong, yes. Wife number 1 here, Jane Royce, she had narrow hips. The baby couldn't get out, they both died. Okay.
Possibly.
Wife number 2 died before she was even pregnant. How is that Jon's fault?
That's not Jon's, unless he left her out in the cold, locked her out, or got into an argument or something.
Wife number 3 had taken Tansy tea to kill babies and just took like 5 doses of it when only 1 was required, you know?
Yes, that's...
Poor Jon Arryn.
Yes, it might, you know, that's a lot of stillbirths and miscarriages between his wives.
Yes, but almost all of them are in Lysa Arryn's womb.
They are.
Nobody else's.
Yes.
So. All right. Comparison with the television show, none of this happens. Hosta has not made an appearance in the show. They're not in Riverrun when Catelyn does free Jamie, but not in Riverrun. They're in a field somewhere. There's no confrontation with civil servants. It goes straight to a not angry, just disappointed King Robb and an incandescent Rickard Karstark shouting down Catelyn Stark. Robb orders more men to the pursuit of Jamie and his mother guarded day and night. So that's
mostly from Rickard, for protection against Rickard, probably.
Yes. There was no argument about her trying to escape at this point. Maybe you're right. Maybe that's what the guards were for. Pedantry Corner, I just have one little thing. She said that she would wear the chains proudly if she were put in Jamie's cell. Now, I get unrepentantly or gladly, maybe. Pride seems the wrong emotion there.
Right. Yeah. Look how proud I am of these chains. Yes.
Yeah, to have really screwed everything for everyone. I'm very proud of myself, you know?
Yes. I disgraced you, I embarrassed you, caused endless grief for you, and for that, I am proud.
All right. News and notes.
Well, according to The Hollywood Reporter, HBO is in the early development stages of the first spin-off sequel to A Game of Thrones. Now, of course, we've heard of many a prequel, but this is the first sequel. Now, since it's a spoiler-free show, I won't tell you the character.
You can't tell us who it is.
Do you disagree? Should I say the character? I could see your...
No, you're absolutely right. You definitely can't say the character. It's a huge spoiler.
Yes, I know, right? So that put me in a bind here. But if you're interested, you can easily find out the report. It's on our Discord server, or you could literally just Google Game of Thrones sequel, and I'm sure you will find
Game of Thrones, who isn't dead at the end?
There's also a rumor that the actor who played the character is already attached to the show. However, actor and representative have yet to confirm this. HBO themselves have been coy about the whole thing. Their Twitter account did a nice job of trolling these rumors. I tried to be as absolutely vague as possible in case you don't want to know who the sequel is about because you haven't gotten to the end of the story. If you do know, then you probably already know.
So last week, Mackelly told us about Jalek Blade's replica Blackfire swords, and he mentioned that were available for pre-order in stainless steel, and someday plan to offer Damascus steel options. And how did we find this out, Mackelly? Did you use the Google machine?
So we finished recording. I walked upstairs, looked at my phone. Literally, the first thing I saw was a tweet from Ilio and Linda saying that the Damascus steel blades are now also available for pre-order. Hey, so that sometime soon was like minutes after we stopped recording.
And so the stainless steel one's $300 and the Damascus steel one is $750. But, hey, that's an heirloom for the family.
That's right. You could put it on your wall.
Exactly.
I'm sure your kids will enjoy looking at that for years to come.
And he's only making 500 swords, is that right?
500 of the Damascus steel swords.
Oh, I see. But the other one, mass-produced. So,
yeah, that's right.
Save your pennies and buy the Damascus steel one. Clearly, that's the right deal.
You could buy the stainless steel one on eBay for $17.95 within a year. So, joking, of course. We got a wonderful email from Enzo Iris. It is much too long to read here, but a small excerpt from it. Enzo says, "You hit all the sweet spots that got me lost in the latter books, Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons. Who did what, where, when, and why? What would have been the options? Pedantry raises all the right questions. Wow, greatness."
Uh-huh.
Enzo also loved our interview with Dr. Tammy Milkey.
As did I.
And one last quote from Enzo that I particularly enjoyed to end the segment. "You are my personal 2 first rangers who are doing a much better job than Benjen Stark ever could.
Well, but at least we're turning up for work.
Yeah. We haven't been missing for the whole show.
Well, thank you, Enzo. It was extremely touching, and we're very, very grateful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Enzo is from Germany, by the way.
Okay, cool. So last week we did a live video session with our members of our Lord Paramount or Royal Kingsguard sustainers, and we had a lovely time. We got to meet a new person who was delightful and charming, and we had...
Yes, hello, Grace.
Yes, and we had just a great laugh. I think we did not talk about A Song of Ice and Fire at all. I think we just shot the breeze.
We didn't,
completely.
really.
I saw the countdown say 5 minutes left, and I was like, we really should talk about these books. You know?
What were we supposed to be talking about
these
again?
People have given up their evenings.
Yeah, we just gabbed until we ran out of time, just like last time.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about Ilio and Linda.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we just chatted and joked and had a really fun time.
It's what I'm loving this aspect of this, you know, how nice our listeners are and how friendly they are and how it feels like it's becoming sort of like a community of friends.
It really does. You're right. It absolutely does. And you're right. It's the most rewarding part of the whole experience. So
we appreciate you all.
Yes, we sure do. Thank you.
Conclusion. Kat is pretty much banished to the naughty step forever.
When I saw that, it made me laugh out loud.
I mean, it's just, and again, to say she's proud of it, it's a weird choice of words. If I was Utherydes and Desmond, I would have been like, well, yes, all right, then you can go in Jamie's cell.
Yeah.
If you're going to be proud of it.
If you're so proud, let's see how you do.
But yeah, she's caused more ructions in the north, and what she's done is going to ripple for many years. Rob's injury, fingers crossed. And then the mystery of the Tansy. You've solved it right here, live for the audience.
Well, Kat did most of the legwork somehow.
But on the subject of things having ripple effects, what Kat did with Jamie Lannister, one, but what Hoster Tully made Lysa Tully do.
Right. Yeah. Now, he seems to be trying to hold on to life in hopes of Lysa arriving in time to forgive him, but first of all, I don't think she's coming. You know, Kat asked, what about 100 or 1,000 knight escort to get you through the mountains of the moon? I don't even know that she's going to consider that. I think it might be unlikely.
But now you've shown me why. It's not just fear. It's not just, it's not just the danger to herself or sweet Robin. It's the fact she doesn't want to come. She wants to let him die alone and unforgiven.
Yeah, very possibly. Now, she did seem very upbeat and positive after the marriage when she thought she was having the child of someone else. But, maybe that was enough. Maybe having that child from someone else was enough to sustain her, and losing that took the life out of her. Now she's just going to be married to this old man who's, I think, 20 years older than her dad. I think it's the number, something along those lines.
Okay. There's 3 things you could do to help us. You could leave us a review, help to spread the word. You could buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhall.threadless.com. Or you can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhall, or become a sustainer at the Lord Paramount or Knight of the Realm levels. And again, thank you to those who've already become sustainers. We appreciate you all.
Sure do. And as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.